emotions. I think it's easy to kind of numb yourself and to jump right back to survival mode, to start looking for your immediate next opportunity, to start immediately networking and jumping right back into it. But I learned the hard way that emotions are truly energy in motion, meaning energy has to actually pass through. And a lot of times, let's talk about it. Hey y'all, what's up? Romelis here. Welcome back to my page. I'm grateful for you to be here, and I'm grateful to dive into today's subject. Today's subject is one that's pretty close and personal to my own heart, and very close to an experience that I had. So, what I'm going to be doing is creating and starting a new series called Elephant Stories, and the name derives itself from the phrase "elephant in the room." And more particularly around the phrase elephant in the room, it deals with the idea of this thing that we all can see, we all know is there, but we've learned to adjust and kind of dance around it and move around it until something happens, until the elephant goes to the bathroom in the living room, or until the elephant, tears up something or moves around. So it's almost like, again, akin to if you grew up in a family dynamic where one of your parents was addicted to an opioid, or one of your parents was an alcoholic, but no one really knew how to address it or talk about it. Everyone just kind of dealt with it and adjusted around it and adjusted their behavior, and how they kind of dealt with it was just more so it's there, but it's not there. So I'm creating a new series called Elephant Stories, which is also a part of my personal brand because it's something that's been very personal to me for the last 17 years. I actually got the idea when I was 17 years old around this idea of, again, having really honest conversations around, there were so many things that I personally grew up, especially growing up in the church, particularly to where there were so many things we were not able to really discuss, or my family didn't know how to discuss, or the religious environments I was growing up in did not always foster a safe place to have these type of discussions. And as I've navigated into corporate America and navigated in my career, working for, in places like Google and Riot Games and some of these other organizations, I see that whether it's a religious setting, whether it's a corporate setting, these same issues and these same communication factors happen because they're just human nature things, right? So that's particularly why I want to start this series, because I want to have more honest conversations around these things and create a safe place to actually discuss them. Let's talk about them. So if there's any elephant stories or any things that you really want to talk about, especially as it relates to the workplace, or things that you felt like were taboo or off topic even growing up, I would love to actually hear from you. Please leave a comment below. Like, drop some of your thoughts, some of your feelings, some of the elephant stories that you felt like were ignored, or people didn't really know how to address, or there was a lack of safety. That's something that we could actually discuss either here on this channel, or we can talk about, because those are more so the ideas that I really want to dive into, because there's so many things that we leave hidden in the dark. And I believe there's so many things that we can dive into that need light. So that's particularly what this video is going to fall under for this particular subject, because again, it's very personal to me and it's something that I've wanted to talk about, and something that feels quite impactful, especially this week. So what I want to particularly talk about this week, and something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, is the layoff that happened with Riot Games recently. The layoff that happened earlier this week. If you don't know, and if you are new to my page, I am a entrepreneur, business consultant, life coach, and by professional trade, a project manager. And in particular, my last role in managing a project was working with Riot Games. And I ended up being laid off at the end of November 2022, at the end of the year, during the first early round of like the tech layoffs that were happening within the tech and the gaming industry. And Riot just recently went through a really large layoff, and they ended up laying off 11% of their workforce and laid off 530, I believe 530 individuals, but I do know the number is over 500, which is substantial. And Riot is not alone. We're seeing these layoffs at Google, at Amazon, and so many other organizations across the tech diaspora, across the gaming, across very specific industries that are either being impacted, and especially in entertainment. So especially living here in Southern California, also knowing a lot of people who work in the industry and work in these other, areas, especially with after the Hollywood strike and all the things that have kind of been happening even behind the scenes with that. there are so many different moving parts and so many people are experiencing upheavals. I even got a message from somebody last night from one of my good friends who was an animator, and they particularly work, for Nickelodeon. Now their contracts are all being pulled, and they're removing all of the contractors who are working on different projects who work for different projects for Nickelodeon. With the rise of AI and with the rise of some of these other things, these roles are being eliminated. So I want to have an honest conversation around the idea of layoff, and I want to share what I felt like I wasn't able to share a year and a half ago when I was laid off. And I want to share honestly what I also learned. So there are 5 things that I learned during my own personal experience when I experienced being laid off that I want to share with individuals, because, and especially people who are experiencing this currently in real time, especially to my former riders. First, I genuinely want to offer a genuine apology. I'm truly sorry that this is what you all are experiencing. The pain is surreal because you're not only are you going through and experiencing a layoff, but you're also experiencing a loss of community, a loss of identity, a loss of direction. A lot of people, and I think what people don't really understand and don't also know about the gaming industry is it's very niched. So a lot of people who work in the gaming industry have dreamed of working in the gaming industry their entire lives. A lot of people who worked in the gaming industry wanted to particularly work for an institution, excuse me, like Riot Games. So this was more than just a job loss to a lot of people. This was a loss of a multi-layered role in these individuals' lives. And I think in today's day and age and how we're able to express ourselves, how we're expected to express ourselves, our feelings even around these things, is a little bit absurd in my opinion. I remember feeling this distinct sense whenever I ended up being laid off that I had this obligation to put up this long gratuitous message on LinkedIn, thanking my former employer. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and putting up this really nice, well put together message. In the sense of, hey, I'm available now for any future opportunities. You need a project manager. And again, we've all seen this message. If you've been anybody who's been on LinkedIn or in these other platforms, these career platforms or job platforms where there is a live feed, you will see a lot of these sort of messages, especially if people get laid off. Because I think often, if we're not, I think again, this is part of where the elephant story comes in. I think again, there's just almost a sense of this fear of you want to be viewed a certain way because you want to jump right back to the field to secure something else. Because often we go into survival mode, right? So you want to say the right things. You want to make sure you present yourself. And I think in a lot of ways, it strips us of our humanity in so many different ways, because a layoff is completely disorienting. Let's be real. Now, I'm assuming if you went through it a few times, maybe it's not as disorienting. But for me personally, the first time was completely, absolutely disorienting and devastating, especially being reared in a Western culture that puts a lot of emphasis, and especially if we get into gender norms as well, especially as being a man, and how that also plays into our role and our identity. So I've had to really unlearn and unshed a lot of these notions and ideas that I had around my career, around my job, around my title, and around what I did and what I do. So I want to dive into the 5 things that I learned from my own layoff, and some things that I wish I was able to say a year and a half ago that I didn't feel like I could say. One of the first things that I actually want to dive into, and one of the first points that I want to share with you, is in the coming weeks, if you just experienced a layoff, the coming weeks is going to be a smorgasbord of emotions. You're going to experience all sorts of factors and feelings that are going to be hard to kind of explain. You're going to feel them in every different way, in every different facet, in every different form. And it's almost similar to the cycles of grief. I think that's the best way I can explain it. Like, you literally go through anger, resentment, denial. You go through all of these feelings because, again, for those people who experience this layoff, especially from what I saw with Riot, again, they got an email, and then you find, and then that's it. A lot of companies are just making this move, and then you're kind of done. And that can be extremely disorienting. So I would say in these coming weeks, as you're feeling these cycles of emotions, please allow yourself to actually feel the emotions. I think it's easy to kind of numb yourself and to jump right back to survival mode, to start looking for your immediate next opportunity, to start immediately networking and jumping right back into it. But I learned the hard way that emotions are truly energy in motion, meaning energy has to actually pass through. And a lot of times we end up letting, experiencing and feeling these things, but not really knowing how to feel them, not knowing how to really process through them, not knowing what to even think about them. And again, in today's current day in market, it's even more stressful if you lose your job because it feels like, holy crap, what am I going to do? It's already tough enough. So I think our immediate jerk reaction is to go into this sort of reactionary mode and start making these immediate moves. So I would say feel your emotions and let them actually pass through, meaning let them cycle through your body. Like, don't be a gatekeeper to your emotions, because I realize if you do, much later on in that process, at some point, they're going to manifest. Because when these emotions occur, when these situations happen, when you are experiencing grief from losing your community or your job, that has to go somewhere. It's just like rainwater. It's not going to just like fall and just sit. It has to deposit somewhere, whether it's a lake, a river, go out to the ocean. That water has to travel somewhere. Same thing with these emotions. We have these emotions, we experience these feelings around these situations that are very hurtful to us, are impactful to us in ways that are honestly hard to be honest and transparent about, especially in today's corporate culture and in today's age where it's you're almost penalized for showing any sort of emotions or expressing any sort of feelings or disappointment or grief, and you're almost expected to almost be this robot. So what I want to simply remind people of is feel your emotions, feel it and let it pass. Your emotions are literally supposed to be a literally like 1 to 2 minute cycle to where it shows up, you feel it, acknowledge it, and you let it pass. That doesn't mean you have to sort it out right there and then. That doesn't mean you have to go through and dive in and start ruminating and start trying to do all this really deep dive and deep analysis. I feel pissed off, and that's okay. And you can leave it at that. So I would definitely encourage you, if you just experienced this situation and you are seriously disoriented, just feel the disorientation. Take a moment and literally just breathe and just sit in it for a second. Feel it, acknowledge your own humanity, because I'm telling you, it will serve you for the energy and the stamina that you will need later on in this journey. So that's step one that I would definitely say, if I could share, that's something I learned over this year and a half, and something I wish I could have been able to express back then. I would say for two, take a minute to process. I think immediately we want to jump into survival mode because, again, that's our natural instinct. You lose a loss of your livelihood and your income and your ability of freedom is what it feels like. And you immediately want to jump to, holy crap, what the heck am I going to do? And what I simply want to say is take 1 minute to simply stop, pause, and actually process. Process what happened, what you actually feel, where the grief actually lies before you start jumping up and putting up a message on LinkedIn and this nice gratuitous message about how you're so thankful to the company. Wait, what are you actually grieving? I'm actually grieving my teammates that I'm going to miss. I'm actually grieving some of the connections that I built. I'm grieving some of the dreams that I had and some of the ideas that I had for my own future. Take a moment to actually acknowledge those, because when we do not acknowledge those things and we let those things just kind of pass and we don't process these things, they manifest in other ways. And even if you were to land a job in the next few weeks, or even if you were to land a job in the next few months, that again, that unprocessed energy has to go somewhere. So it will manifest in anxiety in the next job around what happens if I lose my job again, what happens if I get laid off again, or what, and it will show up, and then it will start manifesting in imposter syndrome, and then it will literally spiral into so many other aspects. And I don't think that we often think about these things, or this sort of like chain ripple effects that happen when we aren't aware, or when we don't choose to actually process what happened and what we're feeling, and then choose to react or respond. So for step three, I would probably say don't feel pressure to post a long gratuitous message. If you are literally experiencing being gutted by a company, I'm not saying go on there and be disparaging to this place, or go on there and completely crap on how they moved and your whole experience and flip. I'm not saying to even react and let out all of the emotions that you're feeling externally, and especially not on a public platform. But what I am simply saying is it's okay to be honest that you're gutted by this experience, that you're pissed off, that you are angry, that you want to offer them a big fu, because you're thinking about all the everything that you offered, everything that you did. And you all and I think the unfortunate realization is we often realize when these situations happen, or at least I did, that I don't see myself like this, but I realize the reality is we're a number to these organizations. Like, here for this role. And when the bottom line gets affected, none of those other things matter. And you have to go through a lot of stories of, why did I get laid off? Was it me? Was it my performance? You ask yourself all these questions, and I don't think that sometimes those questions are actually helpful. So I would say, don't feel the pressure to put up this long post. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing on LinkedIn and everything else. Take the time that you need, one, to process and realize that these coming weeks, you're going to feel all sorts of emotions. So that leads me down to step 4 for me personally, which is stay in the loop, but stay out of the loop. Meaning, LinkedIn was not very helpful for me after I was laid off. And I'm going to just be honest, seeing people getting jobs, and especially as the time went on, and let's be real, this isn't like, oh, I'm jealous other people are getting opportunities. This is more so like, when is it going to be my turn? And what am I doing wrong? And all these other questions that come along with that. I know we don't really want to talk about those things or be honest about those things, but those are very real questions or very real conversations that many of us have in our head. So my point is, stay in the loop, but stay out of the loop. Your LinkedIn feed will not do you any favors over the coming weeks. You will continue to see more layoff information. You will continue to, it will feed you all of the things that it knows you're already encountering or reading in. You're already getting a lot of, notes from your former employee, former coworkers and all these other people that you've worked with. So it's going to continue to feed you that sort of content. Oh, there's been more layoffs at this company, and that's going to in turn cause an internal spiral that ends up making you feel that everything ends up being hopeless, or that, wow, I'm never going to get an opportunity, or the job search is much harder than what it is, because you're literally absorbing so much of the information. And again, the algorithm knows that you're interested in this sort of content because of what you just went through. So it's going to literally continue to feed you this. So my advice to anybody, and what I definitely learned over this past year, is avoid the feed of LinkedIn. If you're going to be on LinkedIn, go to the jobs tab and just focus on that, especially if you're not in the right mindset, especially if you're trying to navigate just different feelings and emotions, especially if it's one of those days where it feels really hard to job search. Avoid that section for the time being. Try other platforms, try monster.com, try, ZipRecruiter, and these other platforms where they also offer ADA, because LinkedIn can be a little bit overwhelming when it mixes in this platform of, it's like a Facebook combined with a Twitter feed in a sense. And that can be really beneficial and useful for networking and understanding what other people are doing and being in for inspiration. But when you are going through a period of navigating a season like this, it's not so motivating sometimes. And sometimes it can actually hinder you more than it can actually help you. So stay in the loop, but kind of stay out the loop. And the last thing I would probably be saying that I think I would actually encourage you all with is trust yourself. I'm not telling you these next few minutes, hours, days, weeks are going to be easy, but I am telling you that you now have the opportunity to actually see what you are literally made of and how resilient you actually are. And I'm telling you from personal experience, because there are some things that came out of me out of this experience and over this past year and a half, whether it was launching my own business, whether it was, generating income on my own, paying my own payroll, things that I never thought I would ever do or that I could do. You will find out how resilient you are and what you actually have in you in this next season. Now, is it exciting? No. Does it feel good? Hell no. Is it this thing to where you feel like it's going to feel great every day? No, it's going to be really painful and really exhausting. You're going to have to navigate a lot of things. But if you follow the steps that I talked about at the beginning, whether it's literally like coming to terms and dealing and just accepting your emotions for whatever they are and just letting them be, like, whether it's simply, again, taking a moment to process, whether it's, again, whatever it is, like not participating in the habitual things that we almost seem obliged to do after experiencing these sort of losses. I think if you take yourself out of that process, it's going to make it much easier for you to actually trust yourself and to know what's best for you. Because this season has revealed gifts and talents that I already knew was there. But when you're in this 9 to 5 world, or you're in these environments that don't always allow for the best creativity, now it's different for former writers, depending on what your role was, because you do get the sense and the ability to be a little bit more creative. But what I will say is, you can still use those same gifts and talents outside of that organization, outside of those walls, outside of wherever you were at. You still have the same value. You just have to figure out a way to pivot and to market yourself differently and to tell your story differently. So all I can say is, it's not going to be easy, but it's not impossible. And that's why I want to make this video to encourage not only the former writers, but anybody who's experiencing a layoff with these 5 tools and these 5 things that I've learned and these 5 things that I wish I could have actually shared a year and a half ago because I didn't feel that I had the freedom to do it. I felt immediate pressure to kind of be perfect and hide all of my emotions and kind of act as if because I wanted to get another job and I wanted this other opportunity to come and I knew they'd be watching the way I responded to this and is he a trooper by taking. And the real reality is it sucks losing your job. It really sucks losing your entire livelihood. It is one of the most gutting experiences. It's lonely. Other people who've never went through it don't understand. Your community change, like it changes a lot of things. And especially if you're like a first generation individual like me, where you finally break into tech and you finally start making a certain amount of money and you've broken into fields as a first in your family in a lot of different areas and ways that other people did not get to do. It means a little bit more to you. It's more than just the money and the income and the where I worked at. It's about what everything else it means to you. So I think it's okay to actually process those emotions and those feelings and actually acknowledge that and acknowledge that that's a part of the journey as well. Because I think, again, this corporate lens and LinkedIn and some of these other spaces have made it almost not okay. You're penalized for expressing emotions or expressing any sort of. And now, don't get me wrong, I know it's more so around how you express it, but I'm realizing even in these spaces, it doesn't matter if you express it in a perfectly buttoned up way or if you express it in a completely unhinged way. The response is often met with the same indifference and a lack of empathy. So that's why I created this video, because I want you all to understand that I empathize with your experience and I understand. And hopefully these 5 tips help you in your own journey and how you can navigate this next season. I wish I could tell you it was going to be easy. I wish I could tell you this 1-2 step and you'll be able to make money this way and that way, but I unfortunately can't. But I can encourage you and can let you know that you will make it. And I don't mean that in the kind of thing like you'll get through it. I mean it in the more so in the sense like you got this. You are absolutely more resilient than you ever have. But I promise you, if you allow yourself to actually feel what you're feeling and allow it to pass, don't gatekeep your emotions. Don't gatekeep that energy that's sitting in your belly right now about how you feel around this. I'm not telling you go unleash it everywhere else, but do whatever you need to do to process through it and to move through it so you can move on and move into what is best for you. Because next is coming when you are ready. So thank you all for joining me for this video. I'm gonna cut it short because I can be a little long-winded and I love to have long conversations. So anyway, if you all have elephant stories or things that you all feel are relevant to you in your experience, please write in. Please leave some comments. I would love to hear from you all. You can email me at romelis@elephantstoriesconsulting.com. If you're interested in more content, and those of you who've also been laid off, if you're looking for more tips, you can check out the video coming up at the end of this video. Just check out the link. And I share some tips on some tools that I've used to also help me generate income over this past year and a half on my own personal journey on top of running my own business. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate you for